Yesterday, we kicked off a new series here at Madison called The Gospel at Work. And as we started this series, one of the things that we brought up was in a lifetime, the average person spends about 80,000 hours in their life at a job. And maybe right now for you, it's not a 9 to 5 job that you're in or an official title that maybe for some of you, you're retired. And if you look at a lot of the retired people we have here at Madison, one of the things you'll see, it's almost hard to tell even if they're retired. They're transporting their grandkids to different locations, going to their ball games, supporting their events. They're up here at the church building, out in the community, serving other people in different capacities. They're finding different ways to be involved and to serve other people. Or maybe you're a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home dad. Whatever your capacity in the job it is that you do, or whatever stage of life you're in, I think we all have certain questions about those jobs. How does what I do 40 plus hours a week fit into God's plan? And is this job and what I'm choosing to do actually shaping me in a godly direction? How do I balance work, being a parent, a grandparent, church life, and family life, but also keeping at the very center my relationship with Jesus Christ? And how can I make sure that I'm not idle in my work, but also not making my work an idol? And so in this series, we're going to deal with all of those things. And so we started in Genesis 2, where we saw from the very beginning of time, God has wanted mankind to work. Now, because of sin, how we work and keep, as described in Genesis 2:15, that's changed. But nevertheless, God has still called us to work. And God is not uninterested in that work. In fact, in Ephesians and in Colossians, it talks about that when you and I work, we're actually working for the Lord. So as we kicked off this series yesterday, we talked about who it is that we work for, which is Jesus Christ, is way more important than what it is that you and I actually do. That we don't just flip hamburgers. We don't just change diapers. We don't just drive our grandkids around. We don't just enter data onto a computer. We don't just use Excel spreadsheets. We're doing all of those things for the glory of God. That God never wanted our daily jobs to be divorced from our daily discipleship. And so we're going to deal with how to bring that gospel to work. And as we did and are going to do, we started with this past week, the two most dangerous pitfalls that we all fall into in our jobs. And that's this: either making our work an idol or being idle in our work. And making our work an idol is very difficult because it's almost something celebrated in our culture. But one thing that we know about idolatry is sometimes very difficult to identify. That idolatry is anything that, in our life that could take preeminence over Christ. But also, every single one of us, God has designed to be worshipers. We're going to worship something. We just have to ask, is what I'm worshiping worthy of having that place? And of course, as we discussed yesterday, if it's outside of Jesus Christ, it doesn't. But work can take that spot if we let it. And so what we did is we talked about different ways that we can identify whether or not our jobs have become an idol. And the second thing we talked about was being idle in our work. In fact, one of the things that Paul also talks about, he says, listen, if you don't work, you don't need to eat. But he also warns us about the dangers of being a busybody at work and how that is actually directly connected to being idle in our jobs too. And so idleness is one of those that is kind of like idolatry in the fact that it can be celebrated in our society. That we can celebrate with, hey, how much little did you get away with? Or how much did you not have to do? Going with the bare minimum. That should never be the mindset. Especially if for those of us as Christians, we should be